Hi, Dawn Stensland-Menti, live here on The Dawn Show. You know, it's something that we all face in life, dealing with death, and it's obviously a tough topic, especially when we are dealing with the loss of a child. I'll share my personal story of losing a child Memorial Day weekend a few years ago, but first, I'm joined by Steve Block, who lost his daughter Amanda in a car accident when she was just 23 years old. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
I know this is a difficult topic for a lot of people, but we'll talk about Amanda, but you were just telling me even before the show started how important it is for you to remember her, and that the worst thing people can do is not acknowledge Amanda, her life, or her death.
She's an important part of my life and continues to be, and you see things about her every day of your life. In the house, as you drive, things that remind you of her, you know, and actually you want to embrace those things as opposed to hide those things. So when you're with friends who knew you and knew Amanda, you know, like, why don't you talk about her? You can't, you know. The trickiest thing,
and here she is when she was a baby.
Yeah. You know, the trickiest thing is when people ask you a question like, how many kids do you have?
Yeah.
And the answer is always
3.
Includes Amanda.
Sure.
You know, and then you have to decide whether or not on that conversation you're going to let them in on it, because you know, some people don't. They're not looking for you to drop the, "Oh, my daughter died," you know. But you just sort of have to, you know, feel it out each time. But you want to bring it up because you want to celebrate her life.
And was that the hardest thing that you initially that you found that people just didn't know what to say to you, and so maybe they wouldn't say anything, or they said inappropriate things?
Well, I remember a very inappropriate moment, you know, like the day she died. But when you stood in line at the funeral home, and as people come through, you know, and you're talking like this, and you just glance down the line, and you see how uncomfortable people really are. You know, like they're about to get to see you and they don't know what to say, and you know, and you don't know what to say to them either. I mean, you know, you're just in a sort of an adrenaline moment. You know, like the whole week of the death is like you're in an out-of-body experience, and you really just want to be able to be present to people. And frankly, the other side is the people who connect with you are the people who just show up. They're just being present.
And just being there for you.
Yeah, they're acknowledging that you have feelings, they have feelings, and it's just okay.
And in our next segment, we're actually going to bring in a friend of yours and the foundation, tell you about the foundation, and remind you that if you have a question for Steve or about the foundation as we move forward, the number is on. We're live, so it's 866-472-8868. But we should say how Amanda died. It was one of these. It's not like she had cancer where you could say goodbye, where you had that opportunity. This was every parent's. I mean, the cliche is worst nightmare, but where it's an icy night in the winter in 2007, and she's in an SUV, and boom, car accident.
Hit a tree, died instantly. And yeah, you know, and I remember everything about that day, every instant. I remember when the police came to the house. I remember walking, I had been shoveling the driveway, walking back to the house, trying to breathe. You can't breathe, and I'm about to walk into my house and tell my wife that Amanda has passed away. And you just, you know, what words do you even, you know, have for that? And so on and so forth. You know, so it's a very, I think the whole issue of death when it's sudden, you know, it's a different experience, whether it's your daughter, your spouse, your you know, your parent. But the ones that never occur to you, you know, your 23-year-old daughter, who has got her whole career ahead of her.
Well, and that's, you know, here she was, this artsy kid, and looking forward to a career and traveling the world, and you know, just to have her taken away from you, because as a parent, we never think that we'll bury a child. We think, well, they'll bury us, and that's the natural succession of life. And so coping with the death of a child, I think, in your life, that's the difficult thing.
Well, I think it's so obvious that everyone is ill-prepared. You don't know how you're going to be until you're there. You don't know what to do. You don't know what to think. But as I recall the experience, you know, I lost my ability to think. Mm-hmm. Your body is racing.
You're
your
in shock.
Heart is pain. You're right. And like, what do you do next? You know, I stopped eating for a week. I mean, it was great. I lost weight. But, you know, what do you do? How do you deal with it? What's next? What's the first thing you're supposed to do? Who do you know? It was just a moment like that. And I just, you need to be surrounded very, very quickly by people who can help and can help take over, because you're about at that moment of, I can't do anything. I just can't do anything.
And do you think that, because people always say it's either going to strengthen your marriage or it can break up a marriage? I mean,
I was very frightened about that. My two other children and Nancy and I went to a grief counselor for a while. And the first thing the grief counselor said, what do you want to get out of this? And I said, I don't want to lose my family. I don't want to lose my wife. I don't want to lose my kids.
You already lost your daughter, so.
Yeah, I mean, that was, you know, that had happened. It was the next thing that I didn't want to have happen.
Well, Steve, we have our box of Kleenex here, so I hope you have yours at home. When we come back, we'll meet somebody who actually started a foundation that was really inspired by what Steve's family went through when our conversation continues.